What's up, guys? Welcome to a Roaring podcast from Roaring.io, where we talk to some of the best in tech and product management. My name is Jesper Kask, and I'm your host. Hicham is currently the COO of Vembla, revolutionizing the way we digitally purchase groceries. Previously, he has been part of the success of companies like Hichams, the French-African version of Uber, and Swede's new favorite app, TipTap. We talk about how customer insight is crucial to product development and management, how to create feedback loops from customers, and conducting drunk user testing. Enjoy. It's great to have you here, and I'm really excited for today's episode. Just to kick us off, what's the story behind Vembla?
It started as a grocery delivery logistics company. So we started delivering from retail stores, and it was in the beginning of the pandemic where older people especially couldn't be shopping in the stores. So the founding idea was, okay, let's make it easier for them. And we also didn't see that there was these type of services in Sweden in general. You had delivery options of getting in 2 days or 3 days or like later this week, but you didn't have anything that felt fast. So when we launched, we delivered in 1 hour from local grocery stores. So we opened up a lot of partnerships with the ICA here in Sweden and Hemköp and so local retail that were already established and very big in Sweden.
And what's been the key, in your opinion, to Vembla's success since the launch and your rapid growth?
I think the timing due to the pandemic, where a lot of people had to shift their behavior. They had to start ordering groceries online because people didn't want to go into the stores. The stores were also limited. You could only be like 50 or 100 people in a store. And also you couldn't go in with your family. They limited it to just you as a singular person to be able to go in. So that was a push that pushed it faster for this evolution. So some people call it that what we're doing is a revolution, but no, it's an evolution because this was already happening years before. It just got much faster at a higher pace during COVID.
And the shift in society towards these digital, high-paced, rapid response solutions like yours are becoming increasingly evident. Why do you think that is?
You have to go like back in like decades to see like how it has evolved. So if you go back, you had this type of business trying out already in the early 2000s, but it was not mature yet. People were not ready for on-demand economy in that sense, where it has evolved a lot in the past 20 years. In the last financial crisis, you had the push of many new companies started then, such as Airbnb, Uber, and so on. And it was because a lot of people really needed a job. It was really unfortunate circumstances. And in that way, you could actually build a big supply pool because you had a lot of people that wanted to work. At the same time, you also, the technique was already evolved enough to be able to build apps that could balance this supply and you would get the demand. So all of a sudden you had marketplaces within service sectors that started growing quite fast. And everyone knows the story about Uber and Airbnb and all of these platforms that have grown since then. And at the same time, that was the start, but then you started seeing food delivery and you started seeing grocery delivery and everything started evolving from that. And today I think you can get delivered anything. And we see a lot of different spectrums where it's they're looking for what is the consumer really looking for, and every consumer has different type of behaviors. So you have the box delivery where you go and pick up your stuff in a box in your retail store or at your bus station. So all these companies are trying to figure out what is it that the consumer really wants. But in combination with something that's very important to also understand why we're here today is that you had social media and the life with the dating and so on, where everything was so instant gratification on steroids, where you could just like upload a picture and you get likes and you get these kicks by it, endorphin kicks and so on. Then you had dating as well. You just swipe right and then you meet a new person. So everything just evolved so fast. Like everything that we do in our life is so much faster today than it was then, and it is because of technology. And this is where it leads us to where we are today, where people want things now. They don't want to wait tomorrow. Like even if you buy a car, you want it now. Even if it's a big purchase, you still want it now. So that's where we are today, and you want to cater to what people want now.
So what can B2B companies do to keep up with this change? Because we see it a lot in D2C and B2C, but not as much in B2B.
It is. I think it's like the never-ending question for big companies to they have this challenge, and they've always had the challenge. It's because of hierarchy, it's because of legacy, it's because of internal politics, and this is why smaller companies usually run past them, because they are so much faster at making decisions. So a big change is a cultural change, and I think that's a big challenge for these big companies, because they have such a legacy when it comes to culture. But a lot of times, like when I have friends that are in management in big companies, and the only thing that I tell them, just keep hiring younger people with experience that have done this before. These are the people that would be, they're already in that mindset that they want to make things happen all the time. They don't want to get bored. They don't want to have a 6-month decision cycle. And these are, I think, the number one things for these big companies to start getting out from. And number two is to maybe start doing, startups within your companies, but give them freedom. Don't like breathe on their neck, because a lot of people think, especially I think in the older generation, they think that they already know everything. They already know their market, but the market is changing. Everything is changing. The world is changing. Every day is changing. So you need to bring people that are adaptable. There is like this famous quote that I always try to mention people, and it's very simple. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're smart or the strongest, it's always the one that is most adaptable that will be the one surviving. And I think these companies need to become more adaptable. And I think more and more big companies are realizing this. And it's funny how long it took, but they had to see other big companies really fall, and that gave them like, shit, something is happening, because these big companies are not existing anymore, and they're like big legacy companies that they grew up with and they looked up to and so on. So those are, I think, few pointers, but in the end, it's a cultural change. I think that is the big challenge.
I also wanted to ask you, because one of the sort of strongest passions that you have is customer insight and what it means to product development. Could you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, it took many years. I'm speaking like as if I was super old, but it took a lot of ups and downs to understand. One is that you are not right, like as me as myself. Like I won't be the core user of our platforms. If you are focusing on a B2C market, it's really big, and everyone is different. And I am fortunate to be one of maybe the 1-2%ers, but the majority is not there. So that's number one thing is that I learned is that I need to pick myself out of the equation. And this has been also a philosophy for bringing into any company that I'm at, is like, just forget what you think. You need to understand what the market thinks, which is your consumers. So one of the big values that I've always brought with me is like community first, especially when it comes to marketplaces, where you have a balance of, let's say, riders or drivers or whatever it would be. And then you have a side of consumers. So they are your first priority, because without riders, you have no business. And they're also your ambassadors, and you want them to understand and feel part of the journey. And without the consumers, you have also no business, because they are the ones that are supporting your idea and your business model and thesis and everything. So you need to have that mindset first. And when you have that mindset, then it becomes very natural that you want to have customer insight, and you want to have customer insight all the time. It's not just when you feel like it. You need to feed your team, yourself, with customer insight all the time to understand this is what the customers say. Because when you show it to everyone in the team, they all get that mindset because they see it on black and white. Sometimes it's just one person that gets all this customer insight, and then they try to explain it, but people don't understand it. So this is one of the number one things that we always set up in the beginning of a company. It's like, show us the feedback to everyone in the company, so everyone sees it all the time. So everyone has that mindset that, okay, users have feedback. of course they have feedback.
Yeah, and it enables you to have that constant feedback loop as well, in terms of iterating your product and providing new versions and new features and so on. But how do you at Vembla, how do you collect these customer insights, and what does that process look like?
It's a lot of channels that we use. So you have the standard survey where you can do. And if we take one channel at a time, survey is not something you want to spam your users with. But when you do it, you want to also get some reward for it. Because they do, like you have your power users and your early adopters, they really want to help you. So you should get the help from them. They're telling you literally what to do. But the rest of the community that you might have might not even want to spend a second on you. But if you reward them, they will. So that is like number one thing. And I see a lot of companies just spamming out surveys and they expect me to spend my time to just fill it out for them. And I was like, what do I get for it? And that's just normal human behavior. Number two, when it comes to surveys, I also see this all the time. I just got one yesterday. I was like, what? Why are they asking these questions? And a lot of the questions that people ask are open questions. You cannot ask those things because it's like saying to a kid, what do you want for Christmas? And they will tell you all types of things. But if you ask them, what do you need for Christmas? They will just tell you what they want. It's not what they need. So you need to phrase the questions very clear towards your users that you are trying to get information from. Not ask, what do you need? What would you want to have in the app? That is very open. More say, what is not working today and what is working today? Then it's kind of clear, like the answer is, okay, this is working, this is not working. And it gives you the information that you really need to improve on. And it is more science to it. There's like this mom's test survey, I think, article where you can read and really understand this. There's a lot of books around it to really understand how you ask these questions to get the answers that you really want. So that is one way to get the customer insight. Then there is app analytics, which is kind of straightforward. Then you need to, so we are an app-based company. So most of our business is on an app. Our users are on an app. So we need to understand the behavior on the app. And this is pure data. So you understand where they're falling off, how much time they're spending, how long does it take for them from when they open the app to purchase? Because in the end, you're a business. You need to understand how can we minimize all the frictions so they purchase faster. So that's one thing. And then you have marketing analytics that also shows you, depending on where they come from, which marketing channels they come from, also gives you more insight on where your customers are. So you actually understand that you maybe should just spend money on certain channels and not everything. And I think this is also a very weird thing. Sometimes you see where people are spending a lot of money on TV and they have existed for 6 months. It's like, no one knows your brand. You're not Adidas. You're not Nike. So it's also a few things. Then you also have customer metrics. And before you start taking decisions on customer metrics, you need to understand what is your core KPIs. What makes your service tick? Like, what is it that makes the users love what you do? And if you don't understand that, then there's no point really even gathering insight yourself. So what is your service? What is the value of it? What are the USPs of it? And then from there, you can start phrasing these questions and also having ongoing feedback loops all the time. So one of the first things that we did was to build order rating into the app, like just right away. And actually, it's not that many apps in our industry that do that. Why do we do that? Because we want to understand the rating of our service internally. You have app store ratings and so on. Everyone is like going crazy about that. But what is really happening internally with your service? Because every area is also different. You also will understand which areas have more challenges than others. And then you also understand maybe that the customers in this area are different from everyone else. But you also can add questions there, like, okay, the service was great, the products were great, or the service was not good, the delivery was slow. Then it gives us also the feedback to understand this is what we need to improve on. So not everything is online. You also need to understand what your offline operations is really delivering or not. And then one very important thing as well is our support analytics. So we have support tickets where people that work customer care, and they're amazing. And that's also a big part of tracking, like what types of support errands are always coming in. How can we reduce this? And this is just an operational mindset. And the more I'm talking with you about this, I just realized it's like, this is exactly how we work when it comes to operations, how we have the feedback loop within the team. How can we improve? How can we get more effective? This is exactly what we do with the users as well.
And obviously there's a mix of quantitative and qualitative input there. How do you see those two? Are they crucial to combine, or could you live with one or the other?
You want a mix. I mean, obviously you want volume because it gives you more certainty on what you're doing is right. But at the same time, you also want quality. But that's also hard. It's like if you do a quality research on a service that is provided to thousands of people, that's really hard to like pick who is actually giving you quality stuff or not. So I think in our case, and the bigger we grow, it has to be more of a quantitative analyze and then understand where the tick is or where the problem would be.
And how do you use this data and insights to feed the product development of your service?
If we roll back a little bit to where one of my things was to always show the team what the feedback is going on, that concerns everyone. So everyone from engineering to product development to the management, everyone, I want them to see it all the time. So that is one of the things that already gives the engineering team and the tech leads and so on understanding of what our challenges are. The product development side, I mean, I did project lead our product until maybe a month ago. So for me, I always had a pulse on what our customers really are saying, like on a daily basis. It was kind of easy to always give this feedback back to the product development. And at this stage now, it's more of a weekly syncs all the time, looking at the pain list from the support team. Like these are the biggest pains, looking at the feedback that we are getting from the users, looking at the surveys. This is what the users are really saying. So it's more about having everyone involved, and it works well still because we are a small team. And the challenge would be when you're a bigger team and how to keep that always like keep that DNA. And I know it is more challenging when you are bigger. And that's why I always leave a company when it's 300-400 people, because it gets too challenging.
And do you have any examples of where the insights or data that you've obtained from customers or prospects have sort of fueled the product development in your team, or even changed the course of it completely?
Yeah, I actually have like two stories that comes top of my mind. One is actually about Vembla, and one thing that the data really clearly showed us before we started our like dark store deliveries and instant deliveries, where we deliver from our own fulfillment centers, was that when we did the orders from the big grocery stores, a lot of the orders, or about 50% of the orders, were small orders. And small orders, also people in their mind are thinking this should be quick. And when you do small orders, it is possible to do it quick. And then the big orders were the other half. And those are more like weekly shopping in that sense. So that was one indication that pushed us more to, okay, we should do our own fulfillment. We have a volume of smaller orders, 200, 300, 400 crowns. And then we have this bigger business with 5 to 1,000 crowns, 2,000, whatever it would be. So that was one of the, if you would define like, okay, this is a rationale to go towards this business, that was one of the things that we realized from there, and how the volume was split depending on the size of the order. But then also looking at what's happening in the market, and instant delivery was convenience is what people are looking for. But to be honest, we were convenient even with our previous model where we delivered in 1 hour. So it's not like we have done that big of a change, except that it's our own storage and our own warehouses, which makes it easier to own the value chain and control. And the second story is more of a funny story because at Hitch, so Hitch real quick is a ride-hailing company, so compared to Uber in Europe and Africa. And we were very focused on the nightlife in that company, worked a lot with the nightclubs and so on. So one natural thing that we started after a while was drunk user testing. So we invited 150 design product people and some of our users to our office, and gave them drinks, and then we gathered them in circles, and they started testing the app, and we recorded it. We took notes to understand everything that they went through, and that was very interesting because it was not really focused on functions. It was more about copy. So copy is also so important when it comes to how you are working with the users. Because if they don't understand your own copy, why they are going to get confused. So even if you have the greatest product, the greatest functionalities, if they don't know what they're used for and how they're used and so on, it makes no sense. So we learned a lot during that specific drunk user testing about copy. There is like another story, but this is about Uber. They also had this copy issue in Japan when it comes to their referral, and they didn't understand. It took them 2 years to understand what was going on, because in all their other countries, referral was a huge thing. It was just like it gave them an explosion in acquisition. And the reason why it didn't work in Japan was because of the copy. So in European markets and then the US, it was like invite a friend. So invite a friend and get $5 to ride for, and they get $5. But in Japan, it's not culturally okay to like intrude into someone else's life. So they had to rephrase it to something else where it was more welcoming, like as you're inviting someone to your house in a sense. So, and this took 2 years to figure out. So this is why it's so important that even when you start scaling and you're going global, to understand one thing is that every city has their own personality and their own culture. And then again, all of this that we talked about so far, you have to redo that again for the next market. And this is where I think a lot of people also forget about.
Yeah, you think you can copy and paste what you've done previously?
No.
Yeah, I love that drunk test anyway. A bit unconventional, I suppose, but it's a great story. And what would you say is the biggest challenge when working with customer insights and collecting and gathering and creating these feedback loops?
One thing is consistency. Mm-hmm. It's always hard to keep a consistent, depending on how much you grow, and that priorities always shift and so on. So I think that is a very important thing. You need to really have people that are project leading that type of project to really love it, to really really want to like wake up in the morning and that's the only thing they want to do. And that's really hard, I think, to maintain that. And the second thing is personal bias. And what happens with personal bias, even if you think that you are like taking yourself out of the equation, but then you have friends and family that are using your service or whatever, and they tell you things, and then you bring that back to the office, and then you're just like stuck on it. So it is sometimes it's very important, like when you recruit a new person who has never like touched your operations or your app, anything, to ask them for what they think and look over everything. So I think personal bias is a very dangerous thing. And I've run into that many times, and I will not lie and say that I'm not personally biased in many cases, and I try to always think about it. But I've run into many cases where people think they're Steve Jobs, and I don't understand that. It's like Steve Jobs is 1 in a billion. He understood very clear what people wanted, but dude, you're not Steve Jobs. Just drop it.
And sort of to round off, as we're coming up on time, what would you leave the listeners with in terms of your best tips and pointers on how to work with customer insights and product development?
But be clear on what is it that you really want to understand, like internally, and remove the personal bias. And one of the most critical things: less is more. More is not more. That is like one of the I think I've hung up like 3 or 4 paintings that says less is more all over the office, just for people to really understand that. And I think that is one of the very big things that a lot of companies and startups, especially, that want to do a lot of things at the same time. But you really don't need to do a lot of things. You just need to do a lot of good things, or fewer good things rather than a lot of semi-good things.
So basically, stay objective, listen to the customer and understand them deeply, create feedback loops, and what you just said.
Less is more.
Less is more. Awesome. Well, listen, Hicham, it was great having you on. I really appreciated you taking the time to join us. And
thank you.
I look forward to speaking to you soon again.
Cool. All right, man. Take care.
You've been listening to an episode of a Roaring podcast by Roaring.io. Feel free to share it with your friend, colleague, or peer if you liked it. If you wish to stay connected to us, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.